Medicine is most certainly not a commodity. Aspirin is a commodity, but healthcare is not a commodity. Legal services generally are not a commodity. Your lawyer has to know you, has to know your situation, has to be familiar with the complexity of your life and of the law. It's not a commodity. Yes, you can go online and do a will, at law.com, or you can do a power of attorney or something like that. But genuine legal services are not a commodity. But they're still free in the sense that they're a transaction between two people. They're not provided by government. Is marriage a commodity? Well, no, of course not. It's extremely individual, extremely important, but it's still free. We don't have a marriage authority where government says marriage is too important to be left up to the free market, and so we're going to match you. We don't have a sort of nationalization of eHarmony.com or Match.com. The most important things in life are not commodities, and they're also not government provided. They're entered into freely between people with a relationship of trust and knowledge. The other question that struck me is similar. Is health care a right? And Barack Obama said, yes, health care is a right. John McCain said, responsibility. If health care is a right, the implications of that are enormous, because it means it must be ascertained at all cost, that we may not allow the healthcare transaction not to occur. We must have it, whether you want it or not, whether you like it or not, it must be imposed. That's how rights work. But see, we're already struggling with an environment in which home ownership was treated as something very much like a right. And what we have is chaos. Now, let me say something before we go to our panelists tonight about rights. And I want you to think about this as we have this discussion. Because in the American tradition of rights, Dr. Lessman, I noticed before the event, is wearing a tie that has some of the text of the Declaration of Independence on it and the Constitution of the United States. You can see it there. Beautiful tie. I'm coveting that tie. I'm going to get one of those ties. When I go home, I'm going to log on and buy one of those ties. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in 1789, happiness meant prosperity. Didn't mean a good feeling. It's the pursuit of prosperity. John Locke said life, liberty, and property, to give you some of the context. Now, what is important about those rights is none of those rights require anybody else to do anything. In fact, they require somebody not to do something. The right to life means you may not take my life, except in cases of self-defense when I'm violating your right to life. Liberty, you may not take away my liberty. Pursuit of happiness, you may not interfere with my pursuit of happiness. Philosophers call them negative rights. Let's just call them liberties. It's the right to be left alone. There are other forms of rights, positive rights, entitlements, which, although they carry the language of rights, are essentially the ability to coerce somebody else into do something. They're not leave me alone rights. They are, I can make you do something for me rights. I can coerce you into providing whatever the assumed right is. Healthcare, housing, food, shelter. Sounds like a wonderful thing to have a right to healthcare. And maybe you will conclude at the end of this evening that there is a universal right to healthcare. But only conclude it when you've fully cognizant of the fact that a right to healthcare is a right to make somebody else do something for you. It's the ability to coerce a physician to provide services, or to coerce a third party to pay that physician to provide services. So, where are we now? We're in a situation where we have ahead of us a presidential election which will turn on many issues, and one of those issues is health care. And we're in a position where we have a great deal of regulation of the healthcare market, and it has led to unintended consequences, which our policy experts will discuss, much like intervention in credit markets, or in energy markets, or in food markets, has caused crises currently in various parts of our economy. I would say that this one is more important than any of them. If we have a housing crisis, that's a terrible thing. But if we nationalize the healthcare industry in a way that causes disruptions in healthcare similar to the disruptions that we have seen in energy, in housing, or in food, the cost is enormously greater because it's human life. It's no longer pursuit of happiness issues. It's now life issues. If we mess up health care, it's a lot worse than messing up home ownership or energy prices or ethanol subsidies and the price of a loaf of bread. There's almost nothing on earth higher stakes than getting the health care question right. And fiddling and meddling in markets has a serious history of unintended consequences.